Hey, what's up, guys? So today we're going to be talking about preparing for tournaments. So to be completely honest with you, I think all along when I joined tournaments, since I think 2008 was my first tournament, official one at least, until all the way up till maybe 2014, for a good 6 years, which is maybe at least half of my playing career. I didn't really put in much thought about preparing for tournaments because I thought that why not just go in as a natural player, just play naturally and just let the outcome be what it is, just based on however well I was prepared. But I think when I spoke to many of the top players, as I attended more and more international tournaments, I made several observations that people really put in a lot of effort just to prepare for each and every one of those tournaments. So I'd like to discuss a few topics today with regards to preparing for tournaments. So the first topic of them all would be physical preparation. So physical preparation is something that should not be underestimated, even though Othello is such a mental game. When given when you're playing any given game, it's not that physically demanding, such as playing tennis or running or playing soccer or football, whatever it is. It's not a physical strenuous activity. It's just sitting in front of the board and playing Othello, just placing this and flipping this. So I think Othello is a mind game, but yet deceptively physically demanding as well. So when you play any tournament, you typically have to play at least 6 to 7 rounds of very intense games. At least if you really want to win or get to the very top, you have to face very difficult opponents, and the chances are that you would probably find yourself processing very complicated end games in most of these games towards the end. So having that stamina to actually sit down for hours end to end to compete is actually something that is really physically demanding. So I did speak to one of the Othello World Cup 2014 champion from China, Mr. Song Yan. He did tell me that he does some form of physical preparation before each tournament. He would always condition his body a little bit by going for maybe short jogs just to get himself, physically fit and ready to play. So I think even from personal experience, I would say that stamina really plays a huge part of the game, especially when you're playing the World Othello Championship, when you're playing 13 rounds straight in on back-to-back 2 days. So on the first day, usually for a World Othello Championship, is that you play 7 rounds. Even though it's physically more taxing, there is still a slight chance that maybe if you're lucky, the first 2 or 3 rounds you meet fairly easy opponents that does not require you to think as hard. But if you hope to win and advance to a higher level, or at least a higher rank table each time, you would the chances are you would meet difficult players, and that would be very physically demanding. So, and when you move on to the second day of the World Hotel Championship, usually in the first day you're already pretty tired for sitting an entire day over there playing Othello and just thinking. And then on the second day, it gets even more taxing because you are kind of channeled into your group of players of similar level. So when you're playing against somebody of similar level, it's even more taxing because you have a good chance of winning, but at the same time your opponent is not an easy opponent as well. So you end up having to struggle quite a lot of games. So physically, it's yeah, it's very demanding. So you definitely have to prepare yourself for that. Be it doing some light exercises before conditioning your body. Another way that I do physical preparation is to play Othello during the normal hours of playing. So in any tournament, typically you play maybe 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. So I try to play Othello during those hours as much as possible so that my body is used to thinking during such active hours. So the second point that I like to talk about is mental preparation. So mental preparation is again another thing that cannot be underestimated. After going to 4 to 5 or more international tournaments, I've seen many players who go into a tournament, uh, mentally unprepared of the competition that they're going to face. They definitely hope for the best in terms of the results, but in the event where you play against an opponent, if you play against an opponent that is super high rank, maybe he's former world champion, mentally you might already break down before even playing him. You're not really prepared to actually go the distance with him, or you probably mentally already surrendered the game to him. So it's important when you're playing against a player with a higher rank to just keep your mentality in a good, humble mindset, in a sense that you're challenging, this top player. But at the same time, don't feel, devastated, or, immediately give up just because you're faced against one of the top players. Because there's always a very slight chance, however small that may be, that you could surprise your opponent and eventually have a chance to beat him. So never give up hope. Never, go into a game thinking that you're sure to lose. Just go in, do your best, and try your best. From another perspective is when you're a very advanced player or expert player. When you're playing a novice player, there is still a slight chance that you might lose. So you probably wouldn't want to be overconfident in any game. So something that I always tell myself is that in any given Othello game, regardless of how good your previous record, or how bad your opponent's record might be, like let's say if you're a 5 wins guy facing a 3 wins guy, a typical 3 wins guy, you shouldn't think that that game is sure for you to take. Instead, you should always treat each game independently, and always look for that one or two special moves in the game that would actually help you secure your win. So it's important to try to put past records aside, and treat each game as a challenge, regardless of however higher rank you may be against your opponent. And of course, there is always going to be the chance that when you are an advanced or expert player, you're going to accidentally lose to a beginner player, and you're going to feel very upset. Even for some players I've seen, they were supposed to win a game by a huge margin, and somehow it turns out to be a draw, and that really affected them emotionally and mentally. So it's very important to try to kind of cut off those emotions right at the end of that round, and immediately go into the next round with a fresh mindset. Of course, this is easier said than done. Even personally, I have had such experiences before where I could have won but I lost, or I could have won clearly but I kind of played it to a draw somehow. I made some mistakes in the end game. So when I reviewed the game, it only makes things worse, because I would feel lots of emotional regret over there. So it's very important to try to have that strong mental preparation and mental mindset. The right mindset is perhaps arguably more important than your physical preparation, perhaps. So mental discipline is equally important, if not more. So the third point that I'd like to cover for today is player profiling. So of course, if you enter into the World Othello Championships, there's gonna be a ton of prominent players, and these prominent players often practice online, perhaps. And if you're able to watch some of their games, you would then be able to kind of learn which openings they are really good at, which openings you should probably avoid. At the same time, besides I put here OQ. You can research their nicknames on Othello Quest, and you can look it up. But at the same time, you can also look up the historical World Othello Championship games that they play. So this kind of brings me to the topics of the next 3 episodes to end off the advanced class. Is that we're going to be examining three of arguably the best players in the world, at least from my point of view, three of the best players. The first one being Mr. Hideshi Taminori from Japan. He's the legendary player with 7 world titles to his name. I think his last world title, even though it came in 2006, he still actively plays online, and he's always consistently in the top few ranks in terms of the ranking in Othello Quest as well. So we're going to be looking at his games and his opening set, and how he sets up his moves, his games, and then we'll kind of talk about that and try to find certain strong aspects of his game, and just try to appreciate and maybe potentially learn from that. So the second player that we're going to cover eventually is Mr. Ben Seeley from United States of America. He's two-time world champion. He's arguably the best, or if not one of the two best online blitz players. So definitely, his blitz game is amazing. He's also very good at the slow game as well. Even though compared to the Japanese players, he may not be as good in terms of flipping Othello discs, but um, he's definitely a player who is very creative, and in terms of how he plays his opening, it's is really very different from all of the players that I've seen play the game. So I think he's also an interesting player to examine. Of course, each time I try to study his game, I always find it extremely difficult to kind of follow what he's thinking, because all of his moves are so unique and special. So you only realize, how powerful that the sequence is only a few moves later when you're about to, lose the game to him. So the third player and the final player that I like to examine or present in the advanced class at least is to profile Mr. Takanashi Yusuke. So he's definitely a very textbook player. All of his openings are, you know, perfect, if not near perfection. So I would say that I think somebody did a quick study on him in terms of the number of discs that he lost per game, across all of the world championships that he's played. I think he's played at least 7 world championships and won at least 5 titles from that. That gives him a good maybe uh, probably 200 games clocked, or maybe 150 to 200 games clocked within World or Tele Championship. And if you were to look at his games, you can see that his games is really almost near textbook perfection. Even if you try to vary it too much against him, he just plays almost near perfection against whatever variation may come against him. So unless you play something really drastic that he doesn't know, chances are is that you're not gonna kind of get away from him. I myself, I had the slight opportunity, probably while he was tired in 2019 World Othello Championship. That was the last World Othello Championship played before COVID happened. So I think that was round 12. I had the opportunity within the last maybe 6 or 8 empties. I was leading +6, but I couldn't close it up because the end game was a bit complex. And at the same time, I think he had very little time, and I had more than sufficient time. But I think maybe temptation kind of got to me when I was looking at the short time clock that he had, and I felt like I was winning, or I had a slight overconfidence that I was sure to win. So that's a very negative example from me. So I think at the same time, it's good to kind of understand that even under pressure, Takanashi Yusuke, as a top player, he's able to try to think clearly and keep calm, even though he had only less than maybe 50 seconds against me on the clock with a couple more empties to play. He still managed to kind of like indirectly force an error against me. He just kept the line as complicated as possible, so it made it really, really difficult to play against him to at least try to close out the game. So we'll examine his games. His openings are not something that is overly creative, but yet it's always solid, always one of the best performers in the World or Title Championship for sure. So that's all I have for you today in terms of preparing for tournaments. I hope these tips really help you, and I'll look forward to seeing you at the next tournament then. Goodbye.